start the session. Today we will start with constructor, and I will be taking session on constructor. After me, Nikhil will be taking session on properties. After that, Pramod will try to explain access modifiers. So let's start with constructors. So a constructor is a special method of a class which gets automatically invoked whenever an instance of the class is created. So we remember that we created in previous session we created object of class, then we access members and functions, methods of that class through objects, uh, and we dealt with methods. But constructor is a special method which gets automatically invoked whenever an instance of class is created. Uh, we don't have to call constructor using object like like we do to call a normal method. It is used to assign initial values to data members of same name class. Uh, let's read some rules of constructor. A constructor has same name as its class name. So constructor will have same name as we define the class name. Constructor can be overloaded. I will be in coming session. I will be programming. I will show you what is constructor overloading. It is called once in a lifetime of object. It does not have any return type. So constructors doesn't have any return type. So a method does have return type. A normal method does have return type. And if we don't want to any value to be returned in a method, we specify void. Constructor can be private, public. It can be inherited. Uh, Here I have defined same thing that I read in previous slide. So constructor have 5 types: default constructor, parameterized constructors, copy constructor, and private constructor and static constructor. Let's start with default constructor. Default constructor. A constructor with no parameter is called default constructor. Means when let me show you. Let me show what constructor looks like. Here is a program written. Here it is defined class. Look here, here is a method, and it has same name as class name. And this is a constructor. Whenever a method will have same name as a class name, it is a constructor. So what is default constructor? Default constructor is something which have no parameters. Parameters are defined inside this small braces. If my slide is small, do tell me. I will zoom it. So, default constructor initializes all numeric fields to 0, all strings and objects to null value. I will debug the code and will show where it is done. So whenever a class is created, whenever we write this constructor program here, now look how constructor is executed. In previous sessions, we have created a class, so it is not new. This line of code is not new to you guys. Here we are creating Greek geek1 object, geek1 instance of Greek class. So whenever we create an object of a class, constructor is automatically invoked. It means either I have called this function or not, this function will run automatically. But in previous programming classes, whenever we have to call any method, we write object name, like geek1 is the object name, and we call it with something. Think I have written some. For example, I write a code in method here, run. Okay, just for reference purpose. So whenever I have to call this method, I will write object name and then run function name. But in case of constructor, even though we don't call the method, constructor automatically get invoked. So let's write the program and explain it in a Visual Studio. I'm opening a Visual Studio. I have pre-written some code. We'll clean it up. Not gonna rewrite again. If anybody will have any doubt, do interrupt in between. For default constructor, so here I have written a default constructor. Look, class name is geek, constructor name geek, and parenthesis, same name as class. This is default constructor. And I have not passed any parameter. So this is default constructor. Look, if I have passed parameter, it will look like this. This is a default constructor. Let me create an object. I have main class in this file. Main method is. Let me clean this up. So I am creating an object of geek class. And it will automatically run this method. Here geek is class name. This is reference name obj, and we are creating an object. Run this program. Default constructor is running as I have defined in a method in constructor. Default constructor running. Let's debug this code, and as I have shown in slide, the default constructor initializes all numeric fields. Numeric fields is this is numeric field. Okay, and objects to null value, numeric field to 0. Let me debug the code. So any program start with main method. Let's run this program. So our control is right here. Let's move to then our control we move to this constructor. Look, I have not called a constructor. I just created an instance of class in that previous line, and constructor get automatically called. So next statement. all the values. Default constructor initializes all the values, numeric values to 0 and objects to null, numeric fields to 0. Got it? Look, these are my data members. So whenever a class is created, these things happen. Whenever an object is created, this stuff happen due to default constructor. So I hope default constructor is clear to you guys. If anybody have any doubt, they can interrupt and ask me. Open my slide. Let's move to parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. A constructor having at least one parameter is called as parameterized constructor. It means constructor should have one parameter, at least one parameter. Then it will be categorized as parameterized constructor. So in this, you are familiar. Here I have written a class. These are properties, or you can say fields. Here constructor. This is parameterized constructor, and this dot name. I'm initializing name field here. And if you are not aware of this keyword, it is an access keyword refers to current instance of class. Whatever the current instance of the class would be, it refers to that. And we created an instance of class. We create instance of class like this: class name, object name, reference name, and new and class name and function. Yes, okay. So I was here. Parameterized constructor would initialize data members with values of passed arguments while object of that class is created. So what parameterized constructors do, whenever we create an object, whatever value that has been passed, the parameterized constructor initializes with that value its data members. In previous default constructor, by default, it was initializing all values with 0 and null, objects and string with null, and numeric fields with 0. But in here, it will initialize it with path parameters. Now let's program this code and see in Visual Studio. If anybody has doubt, they can interrupt in between. We'll remove this. So I've written here a parameterized constructor, which have which is taking string name int id as a parameter. Let's see how we create object for this. We do new will pass parameters. String name I will pass my name. ID could be one. How this program runs? Let's run this program. Wait a second, I will check it. Just run. It may not debugger. Run again. So line control comes to main. It is creating first object. Let's add debugger here too. Look, default constructor is initialized. So it is putting null values to objects. So see the difference and so we are in default constructor. So parameterized constructor has been called. Let's see. It has still null values. Let's first stop debugger and let's just run the program. Okay, so let me remove it. It's creating a confusion. Let me define. Okay. So constructor has been called. It has initialized the values. Let me see whether it has initialized these values or not. When this it has initialized the values of name and ID. Let me see if it has initialized the values or not. So right line widget 2. Let's run this program. So for default constructor is invoked, then my name. So we can understand that parameterized constructor is working. Okay. Let me print ID too. So ID is equal to 1. Now let's if anybody has any doubt, they can ask in parameterized constructor. I will move to copy constructor. Hello.
It's good, Vishal.
Okay. Okay. Let's move to copy constructor. Copy constructor. This constructor creates an object by copying variables from another object. Its main use is to initialize a new instance to values of an existing instance. So what copy constructor does is it copies the object, the variables of other object, I mean, it copies reference of other object. We'll show you in the program. Class geeks. I've written some member, name ID, declaring copy constructor. So when we write copy constructor, we pass reference. Here geeks is class name and it S is a reference. We are initializing we are initializing this value. So we create, let's see how in main we create object. Look, initialization is done here. So we are creating an object geeks1 g1. So it will call this constructor, initialize these values name and ID with June and to 2018. And then we are creating another object using, and here we are passing G1. G1 is a reference of other object. So when we pass this object, this copy constructor will be called and we get access to this fields names. Let's program this code in Visual Studio. I've written here some codes already. Remove this default constructor, it will cause confusion. Remove this too. So first we will create an instance constructor, then we will copy like I have written here. We are creating object for instance class. Then we will copy the reference of that class. G1, G2. Yes. So what it would do as we are passing reference, it will check for reference type and it will initialize it will call this object. Run this code. There are some more stuff that I have to tell. Slowly we'll tell everything. Terminal. G2 name. So to this copy constructor, I have an access to this object. And look here, we have lots of constructor with same name. And this is what we are doing. We are overloading constructor overloading. You see, it's getting overloads. So I'm moving forward to Private constructor. If anybody have any doubt, they can ask in copy constructor related to reference, anything. So let's move to private constructor. Private constructor. If a constructor is created with private specifier, is known as private constructor. It is not possible for other class to derive from this class. Also, it is not possible to create instance of this class. So if we write specify this constructor as private, so we can't access inherit any. We will not have any access to this class from other class. So I'm not writing this program. Points to remember: it is the implementation of single class pattern. Use private constructor when we only have static members. Use private constructor prevents using private constructor prevents creation of instance of that class. Okay. Let's move to static constructor. Static constructor has to be invoked only once in the class. It has been invoked during creation of first reference to the static member in the class. A static class is initialized static fields data class and to be executed only once. So static constructor is invoked only once throughout the program. I will write one code, give an example. Create object. One. Let's run this program. Checking up. The access modifier is not lost. It's static keyword. Static constructor. Right now I'm having issues with static constructor. I'm not able to execute this code. So let me. The points to remember, it can't be called directly. When it is executed, then user has no control. It does not take access modifier or any parameter. It is called automatically to initialize the class before first instance. So what should have happened here? Uh, Whenever once we call constructor, a static constructor will run once. If I call another object, the static constructor will not execute. That was the that was static constructor. So we'll end the set constructor part here. If anybody have any doubt, from all these topics, they can ask. After me, Nikhil will continue. Anybody has doubt?
No, Vishal.
No,
Okay.
no, no, Vishal.
Okay, Nikhil, you can take the control. So Nikhil will be dealing with properties. And share your PPT, Nikhil. Nikhil, you can share your PPT from here. I have access to your PPT. Hello, Nikhil.
Yes, Vishal.
Are you having any problem?
No.
Any issue? Okay. Okay.
Is my content? Am I able to share my screen? Is it visible?
Ashish, Nikhil, your screen is not visible right now, and then you have not shared your screen.
Now,
Now it's visible.
thank you, Vishal. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to present properties. A property is a class or interface member. It includes flexible mechanism to read, write, or compute the values of a private field. It it basically implements a private backing field for providing data hiding and promoting encapsulation. The syntax for defining properties is: first we will use access modifier, which will define its access level. Then we will write return type, which will give what type of value it will either set or return. And then we will provide property name. And before that, we have to define backing field. In property, when we define property, we use two keyword, get and set. A get is an accessor which is used to return the value of the backing field. The return accessor may perform some conversion before returning value or before value. A set accessor is used to assign a value to the backing field. A set accessor may perform validation or conversion before assigning value. Basically, it whatever we do without backing field, it hides that. These accessors can have different access levels, meaning we can use public with get and set, different access level public, private. The value keyword is used to define the value being assigned by the set accessor. When we use set accessor in property, then we assign value to our backing field. There we use value for the value returned by the provided by the user. Properties can be read write. They can have both a get and set accessor. Read only, they have a get accessor but no set accessor, or write only, have only a set accessor but no get accessor. Simple properties that require no custom accessor can be implemented either as expression body definition or as auto implemented properties. When you do not have any custom accessor codes for get and set, we can simply write that those properties using expression body definition or auto implemented form. When we use expression body definition, inside the definition of properties, we use get and equal to greater than sign and back field. And during set, we use backing field is equal to value with the greater than equal to sign. In auto implemented properties, these are basically for simplifying our code. In auto implemented properties, simplify our code while having C# compiler transparently provide the backing field for us. When using auto implemented properties, we need not declare backing field. When we define using expression body, there is no return statement. And when we define in auto implemented property, there is neither backing field and nor return statement. So I will show you by coding. I will give you example of properties by writing codes. Vishal, now my screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible, Nikhil.
Thank you, Vishal. Now I have taken a class product, and in class product we have three fields: P, product ID, product name, and product price. So let's first create backing field, and for backing field we use private keyword for as a specifier for our fields. Now let's define their eh, properties. As we know that the product price can never be negative or greater or less than or equal to or 0. So we will have a get or set validation code for p price, but for p name and PID there will be no validation code. So we can write PID or p name for simplification directly to through implemented properties, auto implemented properties, or auto expression or expression body expression. So for PID, product ID, I have implemented properties through expression body definition. And here I have implemented through auto implemented properties. And here for this, while setting the value of price backing field, I have used properties and valid and checked its validation. So whenever we will try to set the value of p price or price less than 0, it will show error. It will not take as less than 0 value. So let's check. First, I will create products object, product class object. And then access or set or get values of product class objects field. PID. Let's set the value less than 0 and see what our properties do. It sets the value to -17 or not. Let's run the program. the price is set is equal to 0, which is default, and now we can see that p price, as the validation code is that the p price should be greater than the 0, then it will set the value, or else it will throw exception and it will not set. So mainly we use properties for validating our value for our code or field and prevent bad coding. Thank you. Now I'm passing to Pramod for explaining access specifier. Thank you. If anyone if anyone has any doubt, they can ask me.
Thanks, Nikhil. Hello, everyone. Today, in my session, I will present access modifiers. My screen is visible.
Yes, Pramod.
My today's topic is access modifier in C Sharp. Access modifier in C Sharp are the keyword used to define the visibility of a class property or method. It is used when we don't want other programs to see the properties or method of a class. Access modifiers restrict access so that other programs cannot see the properties or method of a class. Basically, access modifiers are the keyword that define the accessibility of members or class or data type in a program. These are mainly used to restrict unwanted data manipulation by external program. There are 6 types of access modifiers, but in this session, we will only learn about these 3 access modifiers: public access modifiers, private access modifiers, and protected access modifiers. Public modifiers is used when we want to access the one class property, methods, and value to all the other classes. Then we use public keyword. Private access modifier when we want to use only inside the class their properties, method, and value, we use private keyword as a access modifier. And protected access modifier, protected access modifier is accessible only inside a class in which it is derived or its derived class. Let's take an example for access data modifier. My screen is visible.
Yes, Pramod.
Yes.
Here we declare a class name student name. Inside the class we declare publicly its field here we will declare a field with public access modifier. For access this value, firstly we will create an object for this class student name. Here we will create an object student name So let's run this program. Now again run this program. There is output. Student name is Ram. When we declare a field value as a private where an error occur. Student name.name is inaccessible due to its protection level. Protection level here, its protection level is private. So it is not accessible by other classes. So private access modifier is access only inside the class where it's declared. Now for protected access modifier. Here we declare a class inherited to student name. Let's run this program of code. Output is student name is Ram. In protected access modifier, it's access only inside the same class or its derived class. So we will derive a class from this parent class student name, student role, and declare a method, public string method, and return a value of name. And here we create a object student role. And next is internal access modifier and protected internal and private protected. This will learn in next session.
Hello guys. Pramod, your session is over.
Okay.
Hello all. In my end of the session, I was explaining static constructor, and we had some error. I will discuss it right now. We'll finish this session. Okay. So we were calling at that time. I was mistakenly calling static constructor, but we can't call static constructor. Okay. So let's call this parametric constructor. This parametric constructor. When I will call this parametric constructor, static constructor will be invoked for once for the first object creation. After this, I will create another object. This another object. Then static constructor will not be invoked. I hope everybody is there.
Yes, Vishal.
Yes, yes, sir.
Name will be different. The first name will be different because I'm creating different objects of same class. And
Vishal, your screen is not visible.
oh, sorry. I thought my screen was shared already, and I was writing some code. So what I did was in static keyword, some error was encountering. I was encountering some error. I was calling this static constructor from here in my in last time, and we know we can't call static constructor directly. So the idea of static constructor is whenever this any of the constructor is invoked, static constructor is automatically get invoked for once. Means that when we will call this the object, when we create object, we are passing values. This parameterized constructor will be invoked because it has same parameters, string and int. This one has reference, so it will not be called. This doesn't. Let's remove this default constructor. Cause any issues? Might cause some issues. So when I will create this object, let's call this program. Static constructor is called for first object when we create first object, and the parameterized constructor has been invoked. This line has been invoked. Parameterized constructor, the name what I have passed, and then setting it. But in fact, when I create another object, setting constructor doesn't get invoked. If I create third object, let's see what happens. See, so the new semicolon. Call this, then this is the- So look, only parameterized constructor has been called. Sorry, I'm not calling this only parameterized constructor has been invoked. Okay. So I hope this static constructor is clear to you all guys. We'll end this session here.